Let's move on now to the Chicago Bears. Let's run through the Bears quickly because this team is god-awful. They are projected 6.5 wins, which is unbelievable to me that they're projected the same as the Lions because to me, I look at this team and I think it is a dumpster fire. So who's gone? First off, Matt Nagy is no longer committing football malpractice every week. Khalil Mack has been traded to the Chargers. Akeem Nicks is gone. Eddie Goldman's gone. Their defense lost a lot of its depth. Robert Quinn's still there, but he could be flipped. This team is resetting. It's hard not to look at this roster and think this is a team that doesn't know who it is, what it's doing. They lose James Daniels, the offensive lineman, to my Steelers. Allen Robinson, even though he basically quit on the team, they lose him to the Rams. They didn't do really much of anything to improve one of the worst offensive lines in the league, which I find sort of baffling. You have a rookie quarterback, a young quarterback who you maybe your franchise cornerstone, and you don't really do anything to bring in offensive line help or receiver help to support him. It seems like this is a team that's following the Jets playbook with Sam Darnold and Adam Gase from a few years ago, which is not the playbook you want to follow unless you're trying to speed run how to lose your job. So in terms of who's coming in now, they have Matt Eberflus. He's the defensive-minded head coach, former defensive coordinator for the Colts. They didn't have much draft capital this year, so they used 2 second-round picks to sort of rebuild their secondary on cornerback Kyler Gordon and safety Jaquan Brisker. So looking at this team, I see a schedule that's going to be much easier than last year. They're facing the 4th easiest schedule per estimated value according to Sharp Football, as opposed to the 9th hardest that they've played last year. So those are some metrics that sort of lend themselves to maybe a more successful year, but just from a pure roster construction standpoint, I don't understand how anyone could look at this team and tell me this is a 7-win team. I think that people are unfairly writing off Justin Fields, the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. And the reason is that I think that Justin Fields is really just catching too much flack for what was ultimately a complete failure on the part of the coaching staff of the Bears last year to set him up for success in any meaningful way. Justin Fields played one of the worst football games I've ever seen. His debut was truly an abomination. I think he threw for like 4 passing yards in the entire game. But the thing is, that team didn't really the coaching staff didn't really highlight anything that he does well. He holds the ball a long time. He did that in college, and he processes the field really well. So part of the thing that they could have done, at least, was put him on some rollouts, use his athleticism to allow him to process the field. But instead, this was a guy who got sacked 9 times in his debut. They were just letting him roll back and get smoked every play. Fields himself became more confident and more capable as a passer, and just in terms of being comfortable and not taking terrible sacks as the season progressed. But what bums me out is that for whatever that progression was, it's ultimately going to be undercut by the fact that this roster, the front office, did nothing to give him. He has nobody to throw to. He has Darnell Mooney, who was his number 1 receiver last year, who essentially burst on the scene, was really good. But I don't know if Darnell Mooney is a true star X receiver. If he's your number 1 guy, I think you may be in trouble. Beyond that, they have David Montgomery, who actually has matured into one of the better running backs in the league quietly over the last several years. And I'm high on Montgomery. But I look at that offensive line, and Montgomery's going to be getting smoked behind the line of scrimmage, just how Justin Fields very likely will be as well. I can't have any confidence in this rushing attack, which I otherwise might, because usually with a quarterback with the sort of athleticism that Justin Fields has and that running ability, this guy's fast, man. You watch him play and you see that speed on the field. He has real football game speed. And when you see that from the quarterback position, usually it helps everyone in the run game. And that may still be the case, but I don't see how this team can possibly go over their projected win total of 6.5, given their complete lack of any defensive identity talent-wise and their complete inability and just failure to surround Justin Fields with any meaningful talent on the offensive side of the ball. So I think Fields will rely on Mooney, Montgomery, Cole Kmet. I actually think Cole Kmet will see a lot of red zone targets this year, so that's something to keep an eye on. But that's sort of all this team has, as far as I'm concerned. So I'll talk briefly just about prop picks for this team because I don't want to waste any more time on them. But I love Justin Fields over 3.5 rushing touchdowns this year. Somehow that's the line. It makes no sense to me. He had 2 rushing touchdowns as a rookie, running on an offense that did absolutely nothing to showcase his abilities. He will absorb at least 8 of Andy Dalton's rushing attempts in the red zone from last year, and he projects to see at least 20 red zone rushes this year. So on these numbers, I find it hard to believe that he won't convert at least 4 rushing touchdowns, barring some sort of craziness. I'm also keen to bet David Montgomery's rushing total over whenever it comes out for the same reason. I think even though that offensive line's pathetic, Montgomery saw 43 rushing attempts in the red zone last year, more than 4 times the next guy on his team. And I think that this could be a situation where he's just put in a really positive situation near the red zone anytime they're there.